let's go back in time a little bit. You were 36 when you were named president of Converse. Do you remember any advice in particular as you assumed that position in 2005?
Yeah, don't do it.
No, seriously.
Seriously. When I was first appointed, or when the announcement came out, I was actually out at a seminar for the Aspen Institute. And one of my colleagues had actually been the president of St. John's University. So he was very eager to give me a variety of advice, as well as to send me some of his speeches, so that I got a sense of how an unconventional president might enter into the academic community. And one of his pieces of advice was to use your first year to meet people in their own space. So go to their offices, meet them in a place that's comfortable for them, rather than expecting them to come to the president's office. Other advice, Bill Barnett, a beloved local businessman and life trustee of the college, wanted me to always trust my instincts. He knew institutions well. He had served on the Duke Endowment Board. He had served on this board. And he wanted to reassure me that I was chosen for a particular reason, that I was not expected to be a conventional college president, and wanted to encourage me to trust my instincts in that role in terms of asking questions and just being myself versus trying to fill other people's expectations of what the president should be. I think the final bit of early advice I got actually came in a package. John Stockwell, who at that point was the chancellor of USC Upstate, sent me a book called The Contrarian's Guide to Leadership with a note saying, read this and then let's have lunch. And that was an amazing resource for me. I still have the book. It is underlined and dog-eared pages throughout. But it really gave me a way. It was written by a college president, the head of University of Southern California, and it was really about how to approach leading a college or a university if you were being brought in as a change agent or a catalyst for the institution to think differently about how it does what it does.
Good advice, then.
Yeah.
Early in your presidency, Converse launched, at your urging, a new strategic vision centered around creativity and community. How do you think that focus has impacted your presidency?
Well, I believe that creativity and community really came out of broader-based conversations from the strategic leadership team as well as focus groups about what really set the institution apart. So in the course of our developing that plan, and in the course of my serving as, I guess, chief spokesperson, leader, guide for that plan, it has really infused everything that I've done, and I hope just about everything that we've done as a college. In terms of creativity, we developed a very extensive white paper that defined creativity out of the more traditional, limited parameters of it being considered only artistic, and instead defined it in much broader terms: flexibility, adaptability, which could very easily be applied across the disciplines and even in the way that we approached meetings, conversations, planning sessions. And we saw that actually happened. So you were part of some meetings where we brought out the Creativity Whack Pack when we were trying to grapple with a really challenging issue and we were stuck, to other areas in terms of starting an internal creative collaboration grant program where we really worked to break down traditional boundaries across the campus community and to create broad-based creative endeavors to energize the campus community. On the community side, I think it's just my leadership style. How do we be as inclusive as possible in discussions, in understanding the issue, and ensuring that we are doing what's best, impacting the largest number of our community members, especially the students, in how we go about evolving Converse College.
You know, it's funny because, and this is sort of off course, but the profile of the South Carolina graduate now heavily talks about creativity. And there's so much conversation now about creativity in a way that there wasn't 10 years ago.
I do think Converse was really on the leading edge of that conversation, and in terms of advancing that skill set or talent for college students and graduates. I think one area where you can really see our growing along those lines is the focus on faculty mentored research with students, and that has grown exponentially in the last 10 years at Converse, and that is really urging students to identify questions that they want to explore, faculty approve it, and then they do their own research and engage in a discovery process that is very hands-on, and many of them end up publishing papers or it being their key to getting into graduate school.
You know, I think that's one of the hallmarks of your presidency. You are a question asker, and you prompt people to ask questions. Where did that come from?
Wow. I'm not quite sure when I started to ask questions. I think I am by nature a very curious person. And I think also as a young student, I was pretty slow in doing the normal reading, writing, arithmetic, but I was very socially engaged. So I think asking questions was a way of my learning, even though I couldn't do the normal rote things that most first graders could do. It probably came up in my family, so they're being open to my asking a lot of questions. And it's just been a critical part of how I go about engaging in the world. So it's asking questions is a big part of how I learn, and I feel like I'm a lifelong learner.
You have 4 nieces, and now, as a result of your marriage to Ed, you have the opportunity to enjoy teenage girls or young adult women in your home. What do you hope that you model for these young women, as well as for the students of Converse?
You know, I take very seriously my position as a role model. I, first of all, love being surrounded by girls and young women and young people in general. But most especially, I hope that I am an example for them in terms of how they can live lives of meaning and impact, purpose and passion, with outside the normal social parameters or expectations. There is not one way to go about living a full and satisfying life. But I do think society today, maybe less so than it was 100 years ago, but still sets up very particular expectations. And sometimes that can be very limiting for women's aspirations and dreams in particular, and especially in the Southeast. So I hope that I am a role model for dreaming big, for how do you go about making your life meaningful to yourself and to the other people around you. I consider my nieces, my stepdaughters, the 600 women every year with whom I interact at Converse to be all my daughters, even though none of them are of my own flesh and blood. And so I hope they use me as a mentor and a resource as they're trying to figure out their path and their place in the world. And I do think the Converse students have certainly done that. And they have taken to that expectation and hope very eagerly.
Your mother is a Converse alumna. Is the Converse that you remember as a child when you lived down the street wholly different than the Converse of today and the Converse that you leave to your successor?
I think we've just evolved that Converse. I think so much of what Converse is today is fully grounded in what it was set up to be back in 1889. It was in our charter, it talks about providing access to a quality education to those who did not have access. And it also included a point about the well-being of the country depends much upon the culture of its women. So it was about access, opportunity that needed to be impactful. That wasn't just for one person, it was to advance culture, the country, society at large. And I think my mother got a tremendous amount out of Converse College in terms of her work as a community leader, as a public servant. But what she needed in the 60s is very different than what students in the 21st century need. And so what we have done is stayed very committed to that core reason for our existence, but continually evolved it over time. So it is different, but at its core, it's very much the same as it was in the 60s. It's very much the same Converse as it was in the 1990s. We just need more closet space for our students because they bring more clothes.
What do you believe have been the most critical advances as a result of your leadership?
Yeah, I really appreciate your changing that question around a little bit because
that's what I meant. I mean, so what has happened here that you believe has been really most important?
So I know you probably asked that question expecting a building project or the tuition reset or some other large initiative. But I think my biggest impact on Converse is giving us, a sense of pride back, a real sense of value, confidence in what we are, in our unique and distinctive nature, and running with it, feeling free to recognize our competence, our sense of courage, to be able to do really bold things, like fundraising for the Heath and building it at the start of the Great Recession, like the tuition reset, which you were actively involved in, like so many other initiatives that we have done, even launching the Converse International School with these 2+2 cooperative degree programs with 2 Chinese universities. I think it was really beneficial for Converse and Spartanburg to have a native daughter who grew up here, who had extraordinary experiences all over the world, really, come back and say, wow, look at all the strengths this institution has, from the alumni and their success, from the student experience, from the faculty, their accomplishments and their commitment, to our gorgeous physical plant. Let's play to those strengths. Let's not hide them, and let's really start being very confident and courageous in how we make that very relevant and activated in the world today.
Okay, you used the perfect word for this segue, because I was going to say, you're one of the boldest people I know, one of the boldest women I know, but I think it takes bravery to be bold. Do you think that Converse can be credited with having been brave enough to be bold?
Yes. I actually think Converse has a long history of being bold and brave. From the time we were established as probably one of probably the 15th women's college in the country to be established, from how we have imagined new professions for women in the early 20th century, from our early graduates who were part of getting women the right to vote, taking trains up to Washington, D.C. We have a history of boldness. We have a history of being brave. I think, though, sometimes you lose that boldness and bravery if you're not reminded of it. If someone from the outside isn't reinforcing your strength and your bravery, and someone who you trust, right? Someone who is willing to roll up his or her sleeves and get in there and do the work it takes to fully realize the potential of these strengths. So, but I totally see Converse as a brave institution. I think Converse has been brave in how it's weathered the Depression, in how it has fought through the Great Recession, in how it fought back as a lot of women's colleges in the 70s and 80s were either closing their doors or going co-ed. There's a real strength to this institution, both in terms of bravery and boldness, as well as in terms of those academic and student life strengths.
And as an alum, I got to tell you, I love that. All right, and as an alum, let me ask you this. What is the one message you think every alumna needs to hear?
Be proud of Converse College and invest in your alma mater. I think it is so important. We get caught up in our everyday lives, we get caught up in our children's lives, and we forget that a strong Converse means a strong degree from the institution, means a stronger network for you as an alumna, means a stronger network for your family and your community. So I would really encourage all alumni to think about how they can invest in this college. Give every year to the annual fund. Just give. It doesn't matter the amount, but being engaged in that and saying, yes, this is important for me. Give of your talent and your time to mentoring students, to helping provide internships, to serving on advisory boards, to connecting to other alumni in different chapters in different cities. But invest in your alma mater. That's one thing that I would really encourage all alumni to do for their college.
Okay, surely you have a favorite story about a Converse student, or maybe multiples.
I have multiple favorite stories of a Converse student, or many Converse students individually, in groups. We would be here forever and a day for me to recount all of those. What I would say, my favorite stories, what they have in common is students being their authentic self with me. And in the course of talking about career aspirations, challenges with family members, because they have grown out of their parents' mold, challenges with boyfriends, and whether you break up or keep going. So I think my favorite stories have that common thread, students feeling really comfortable being themselves. So the ones that bubble up to the top of the list, or at the top of my head right now, one is Tiana Perez, who was an incredible student here. She came from New England, African American, and I knew she was special the minute she showed up for a summer orientation program, and how she wanted to develop her leadership skills among women in particular. Now, Tiana was always working it. She was our first customized major, but she was always working something. She came to every single one of my open office hours to talk to me. Sometimes it was about personal or academic things. More often than not, she was pushing something. So trying to sell me makeup, trying to get me to get involved in this organization or that organization. And I loved her for it. She was just the embodiment of boldness and taking the Converse ethos seriously and helping it to become part of who she is. or was growing into at that time. I think of Elizabeth Martin and Larkin, who took pictures with me from the time I arrived on campus. And they were always popping up to take pictures of the three of us. And then before they were graduated, they came by to give me an album of all the different pictures that they had taken over their tenure with me. I think of Tyler Lawrence, who worked in the president's office, and she knew the skinny before most other people did in terms of my dating Ed, who's now my husband. When he was my boyfriend, she had the courage to step up and ask him to dance at the Peppermint Ball. That was pretty funny because he immediately said yes and got right out there, and he loved that part of the Converse experience as much as I did.
All right, how has being a college president shaped the way that you see the world?
I think being a college president and being the president of Converse in particular has really transformed how I look at the world. I think first and foremost, I think I came into this presidency taking a college education for granted. I did not realize how challenging it is for so many young people and families today to get to college and to make it through college based on family demands, financial demands, social and psychological demands. And that was something I had been prepared from the time I arrived on this earth to go to college and had a support network funneling me in that direction. And I didn't realize how fortunate I was to have that support from the get-go. So I have really come to appreciate, and I think Converse has come to appreciate, just how important our role is in helping to expand access to quality education and supporting those students who aspire and can be successful to be successful in a learning community. I have become a real advocate for choice. I have learned as a college president there are many different options and many different college experiences out there, as well as many different people who learn differently. It is really important for us to advocate for choice and a diversity of options, educational opportunities out there for students and families today. And then the final piece, in terms of being a college president, I have come to appreciate just how much an education and a college education is the ticket to success or is the ticket to changing a family's trajectory. It really does result in more income over a longer period of time. It really can, for a first-generation college student, it really can change their entire family's idea of what the value of a college degree is and what a college education can do for you, not just in terms of earning, but in terms of developing as a lifelong learner that will take you far in a world that is changing very rapidly. And having that kind of acumen, in your toolkit is really important to being able to not just survive in the world today, but flourish and contribute.
The Chronicle of Higher Education reports that the average president is in that position for 6.5, 7 years. You've stayed well beyond that. And that's incredibly commendable because I know from having watched you, it is an all-consuming. It is an all-consuming position. But what is it that's kept you here for that length of time, going on 10 years and counting? And tell us a little bit about, okay, why step away now?
I think what has really kept me here has been the people and the energy around the vision of becoming a leader for creative thinking, teaching, and learning. How do we focus more on producing engaged citizens who want to go out and make a difference in the world? And so I think the people, the projects, the programs, making sure that the foundation that we established, it had momentum, and wanting to kind of keep it going because the people involved, students, faculty, staff, were so involved in making that happen. So I think it's just been the dynamism of the institution, and I think the real important place of my serving as leader and finishing what we started together. What I will say, though, is in taking stock, at 10 years, I realized we had done way more than we ever thought we could do back in 2005, more than I even dreamed possible. I mean, enrollment growing on the undergraduate front by 30%. The building projects that we've undertaken to enhance the curricular and co-curricular experiences of our students, the athletic program, the new academic programs. When you looked at it in sum, the visibility that we had gained through bold moves like the Reset and some of the 3 South Carolina Professors of the Year awards that we've received, it's been phenomenal. And I thought that it seemed like the right time to say, okay, it's time for new leadership. It's time for new energy. We have a foundation of where we want to go and how we continue to grow on the undergraduate women's college front, but how we also want to grow around that with the Converse International School, with graduate programs, both on campus and online. But that there's a platform there for someone to come in and take a leadership role and run with it. And it seemed like, one, we had accomplished way more than I even thought we would be able to 10 years ago. 2, it was a really wonderful point for getting great leadership to succeed me and grow the college. And as you know, on the personal side, I also happened to get married about a year and a half ago. And I thought it might be a good time to experience what it would be like to live under the same roof with my husband at the same time. Now, mind you, he's fully supportive of my being president of Converse for as long as I think that it's right. But in having conversations with the chair of the board, as well as watching where our senior leadership team is and our community is, it seemed like the right time. And I didn't want to wait till you all kicked me out.
You and I have had many conversations over the years on the topic of no matter how old we are, we're always our parents' children. And so I'd love for you to talk a little bit about what your presidency, what you believe it has meant to your mother, who's a Converse alumna, but also what you think it meant to your father when he was alive.
God, that question made me a little emotional on both of those fronts. So, my mother and I have talked about this regularly, and I think she gets quite emotional, which is probably why I get emotional, about having me come back to her alma mater and assume a leadership position and help the college find its confidence and competence and courage. She knew it. She found that here for herself. And so I think she has been really proud, grateful, engaged, excited, watching her daughter come back and lead a place that she loves to such a wonderful moment in its history. And I think she's being a proud mother and a woman who loves to see strong women in action. I think she's loved to see me serve in that role at an institution that's important to her, and to be a really strong woman in action in the community in which I was raised. My father made a point when I'd come back to attend every single one of my Founders Day, opening convocation, new student assemblies that he could. And he always sat in the back 2 chairs. Actually, Kathy Worley would he started to understand his habits and would just keep a little seat reserved for him. And as you know, he was ailing. He was battling cancer. And so that was really wonderful for her to do, because he would kind of come in with his cane and just slip in. So I think he loved seeing me as a professional in action, because I had gone away to boarding school like my siblings and away to college and had worked in a variety of different cities. He didn't see me in action. He saw me when I came home and was resting, but he really relished the opportunity to see me as a professional woman doing what I clearly loved and enjoyed, and he enjoyed seeing how the community responded. I'll tell you a little story. When in my early years, I would go over to my parents' kitchen and I would have a draft speech before I would give it, and have them sit down and listen to me practice, and then they would give me points like, you have too many different themes going on, you got to streamline that, or it's too long, or so they would give me advice literally the night before I would give the speech, and then I'd go home and do my editing based on their criticism, and it made it a better speech. It made the experience of my serving as president, and they're getting a firsthand peek at what I was planning to say the next day, just so much more personal and memorable. So I think it enhanced our connection, but I think for them, they just love seeing me in action here, because they respect and love the institution, and they respected and loved me as a daughter, even though I misbehaved on occasion.
That's hard to believe. What has made Converse home for you?
I think it has to go back. It's the relationships with people, with alumni, with students, with faculty and staff. The opportunity to push and pull. I do understand when I first arrived, and I heard from various members of the senior leadership team, that I asked too many questions or I pushed too hard. And in the course of that conversation, they learned a little bit more about me as a person. That's just my nature. I ask a lot of questions. I verbally process. Now just about everyone knows the president's saying something, but let me ask her some questions to be clear that I'm understanding what she's asking, what she's requesting of me to do. Is she heading in the right direction? But I really think it goes back to relationships, conversations, and our collective investment in preparing the next generation of women to have meaningful lives of impact. And I love that. That feels like home to me. But I was just thinking, there's a saying, home is where the heart is. And I think it's the relationships here that stole my heart. And so my heart will always be here. So
I love that I got to be a part of all of that. All right, we're going to flip things around a little bit so that you don't cry. I've got a couple of fun questions for you.
Good.
That students submitted.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. This is what they want to know. What's something that you have done that they would find completely out of character?
Oh, they might not know. The students might not know that I am very accident-prone person. And in my family, I was notorious for getting injured. From when we lived out in Arizona, when my dad was doing a fellowship, I slid down a sliding board into a cactus. I had 100 needles in my little white bottom. And my father had to pick out every single one of those while my mom held the flashlight. So that was one example, but I have more stitches in my head, behind my ear, in my forehead right here, of my being daring and being injured because of that. And probably the last example of that is having torn both ACLs skiing and having to go through physical therapy. So they know the last of the end of that story. They probably didn't know the start of that story.
Well, I think it's really noble that you tore them on the ski slope rather than just falling off a curb.
That's right.
All right, you know that the students here love your sense of style, your panache. So they'd like you to sort of take them on vicariously the perfect shopping spree. Where do you go first? And what's a must-do when you hit a favorite store?
So, first of all, I have heard there are rumors flying that I have a personal stylist. And so let me dispel those. I have no personal stylist. And I am probably the fastest shopper that any of you could ever imagine. I move through a store and I try on and discard or put in my yes pile clothing and scarves and shoes faster than anyone can imagine. I am a power shopper to the nth degree. So in any case, what it involves is my going through, and I usually pick up a salesperson. Some salespeople have come to know me because I do have favorite shops. And going through things that I like, colors, or I let them know what I'm looking for, a suit with pants and also a skirt, and I need a couple of different scarves to go with that. So I give them a little bit of a lay of the land, but then I start just whizzing around and saying, let's try this, let's try this, let's try this, and I go in. I buy in outfits. I don't usually buy one piece at the time, so that I can mix and match and coordinate everything. Does that, and then I will say the one weakness I have had in the past is for shoes. So I will always go into a shoe store and try multiple pairs on and end up buying a couple at a time too. But I don't shop regularly. I shop like one day in the fall, one day in the spring, and then I'm done with it.
Well, you know what they say. If you're not teased, you're not loved. And
Right.
you are very loved about all that.
I feel very comfortable about that. But I wish there was a secret formula, because then I might be able to sell it and become really rich and give a lot of money to Converse. But I haven't found it yet. Maybe during my 3 months off, I'll figure out my secret shopping formula.
All right, here's another question from a student. And I like this one too. What's your favorite spot on campus?
My favorite spot is the area between G Dining Hall, Pell, and Dexter now, because it used to be, in my mind, the ugliest spot on campus. It was gravel. You could see the HVAC systems close to the campus safety building, and it has been transformed into this place where people can sit. There is green grass. There is no asphalt to be seen, and it really is beautiful now, and it used to be the ugliest space on campus. Other favorite spots, I love the hammocks outside of the cabin. And I really love how that space has been transformed, and it'll be even more beautiful when we complete the amphitheater project. And then I also love Johnson Plaza and how it opens up the Wilson Hall to the street. And I love that the seal has a permanent and significant place on campus now. Before we completed that plaza, we had no seal hanging or installed in any place on our campus, and now it has, a place of prominence.
All right, now this is my question. What does a college president keep in her refrigerator?
We might have to have the camera crew go over and see my refrigerator, because it has been the subject of several jokes over the past decade. I keep low-sodium V8 juice. I keep a lot of yogurt. I keep 2% milk and skim milk. I keep water. I keep a lot of beer. I keep blueberries and cheese sticks and usually bacon, boiled eggs, and then like some vegetables that I can pull out and get ready if I'm moving really quickly. So the little mini carrots, broccoli, spinach. Oh, and during the winter, I have a lot of ready-made soup, so I just pull them out and eat them. But the funniest part of my refrigerator is everything is lined up. So I don't have just one yogurt container. I have like 12, and they're organized by flavor. The V8 is in a very particular lineup, too.
Has that changed since you've been married at all?
No.
No, it's adapted.
The refrigerator in Charlotte has not yet been properly organized. But over Thanksgiving weekend, I did clean up the freezer, and it looks really good now.
What do you hope your legacy will be?
I hope I am known in the history of Converse as a president who set the college on a dynamic, momentum-filled course for success in the 21st century, so that 100 years from now, people are still talking about Converse in the national media, about the outcomes of our students, the success and commitment of our faculty and staff in how we transform lives, in how we are helping to change the trajectory of women in the Southeast in terms of how they live lives of purpose and passion. So I hope I'm really known or remembered as a president who energized our understanding of the distinctive place or the distinctive needs that we fulfill in the world and in society through this unique learning experience in Spartanburg, South Carolina.
When you were president, early on in your presidency and throughout your presidency, you talked a lot about educating women to effect positive change in the world. What kinds of positive change do you look forward to being involved with in the future?
With Converse or outside of Converse?
Outside of Converse.
I think I will forever be committed to activating, celebrating, strengthening human creativity, expression, accomplishment. I think I'm just driven. In my mind, that's all about building human capital, which is how you build community capital, national capital, global capital. If we don't have the human resources who are engaged and equipped to meet the needs of the world, we're in trouble as a society and as a world. So I hope I keep doing that, telling stories, sharing stories, activating, helping to grow equity in the workplace, in the political arena. I really hope that my life continues to be about building human capital and capturing stories and helping to inspire confidence and courage in others.
We started this interview talking about advice that you received. What counsel might you share with your successor as she or he steps into the position as president of Converse?
I think my first point of advice would be this job is about continuity and evolution. So if you are really eager to make a mark, think about it in terms of how you build on the legacy and the shoulders of others. If you as a leader are coming in to make your mark, it will be very challenging because this is an institution with its own culture, with a rich and dynamic history, with a predecessor who has invested so much of herself. Really work to build a vision and a platform that is about continuity and evolving where we are in 2015 to where it needs to be, which is going to be dramatically different, but also very much the same in 2025. So continuity would be a really important piece of advice for my successor. The second is ask questions. It's a really important way for you to get to know the place, get to know the people, for you to understand how much expertise and knowledge and talent exist on this campus with staff, with faculty, with students, with alumni and other constituents. I think my final piece of advice would be to have fun. It's really it is a fortunate person who gets to serve as a president of a college, and especially a college like Converse, which is so focused on being creative and so focused on building community. And so enjoy that part of this experience. You are going to be pushed and pulled in many different directions. You're going to be on the road a lot. Have fun. Build relationships because it makes everything worthwhile. I think I have a final other piece of advice. So I'll probably have a lot. If hopefully my successor will want to ask me a lot of questions as well. But the one other thing that was a surprise for me, and I don't think I really came to realize until halfway through my tenure, is how powerful your words are because you are president. Not because you are Betsy as president, but because of the role that you occupy. So it's really important to not assume that people understand what you mean. You need to go back and confirm that what they hear is actually what you mean, because people will run themselves ragged trying to support and serve you for the good of the college. And that's not what your intention is as a president. So know that the power of the position is held in high esteem, and respect how much people are interested in helping you be successful, because in their mind that means Converse is being successful. So be clear and don't assume people know what you mean.
Well, thank you. I will say this. Thank you for your service to this college. Thank you for this time together. And I just want to say thank you too. Personally, I loved being a part of the journey, and I know that there are so many thousands of people, literally, that have loved being part of the journey with you.